You know you were abandoned. There is no escaping that fact. If there were support, you would not be here. If there were true presence, you wouldn't feel this absence. If there were commitment, you wouldn't have to deal with loneliness. It's simple, and it's uncomfortable. The transformation you seek does not come from a pretty narrative, but from the rawness of reality. Time away from them. Wears down, reveals molds, forges. And you. Adapt, reinvent, strengthen, distance. There is no mystery in your evolution. There is a process that few recognize. You transform when abandonment forces a response. This is not a fairy tale. It is a harsh truth. Abandonment is not a burden, but an opportunity, a chance to shape who you truly are, apart from the other's bonds. This new version of you does not need validation. It exists because you decided. It's not about being strong, but about recognizing that the strength was already there, waiting to be discovered. The bond that existed only remains if you allow it. The other's control only persists as long as you don't sever it. It's not about being abandoned. It's about finding yourself. The reality is clear. Nothing changes if you don't decide to change, and that turning point does not appear by chance. It demands your active choice. Abandonment can be painful, but it is also liberating. You don't need more than that. The transformation has already begun. You talk about transformation, but the truth is that often you see yourself as a shadow of what you could be. Sitting on the edge of the emotional abyss, you observe the echoes of your former life. Memories are not just a distant past. They are chains that still bind you. You remember the promises made, the sunny days that turned cloudy. What was once a relationship is now an invisible prison. You don't admit it, but doubt haunts, and each silence brings up the question, what is missing in me? The answer is clear. It is not your failures that feed this pain, but the lack of reciprocity. The illusion that the other could fill your void was a mistake, and loneliness becomes part of your identity. Meanwhile, time passes. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. And the cycle seems endless. The other makes promises, gestures of affection that soon dissipate like smoke. You hope for change, but it never comes. The pattern is clear. He disappears, reappears, and you justify it. You get used to this sad dance, believing that the movement itself is enough to keep the connection. However, the reality is simpler. The other is not investing. You are the one who makes an effort, the one who seeks to understand. In this process, what really matters is lost from sight. The transformation occurs outside the field of your perception, because the real change happens when you finally decide that you will no longer dance this waltz. The pain of abandonment is deep, but within it resides a strength you may not have seen. This strength does not ask for permission. It is intrinsic to your being, waiting to emerge. With each step you take away from emotional dependence, you reconfigure yourself. Each time you refuse to accept less than you deserve, you rebuild yourself. It's a new cycle, a cycle of empowerment. Even so, the temptation to return to the comfort zone can be overwhelming. It's easy to give in to the desire to have someone by your side, even if that someone doesn't reciprocate. But you know that much of what you long for is a mirage. The other says goodbye subtly, but the pain is not subtle. You feel it, and to feel means to be alive. The question is, what is the price of this liveliness? By allowing the pain to shape who you are, you become the architect of your destiny. Each scar represents a lesson, each tear a farewell. You no longer worry about seeking approval because you've learned that your worth is not determined by others. You become aware that every choice, no matter how small it may seem, profoundly impacts your journey. The bond only exists as long as you sustain it. And now the responsibility weighs on your shoulders. Remaining in someone else's shadow is your decision. Stepping out of that shadow requires courage, but that courage already resides within you. And with each moment, with every reflection, life begins to reconfigure itself. The space that was once filled with expectations now houses new possibilities. You discover new interests, reconnect with old hobbies, and connect with people who genuinely value your presence. Each of these small decisions may seem insignificant, but together they build a new path, a path where you don't need to justify your existence. Freedom is not an abstract concept. It reveals itself in everyday acts. Going for a walk, reading a book, setting goals without needing external validation. You learn that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. And then the transformation intensifies. All the weight of abandonment turns into fuel to move forward. You realize that abandonment is not an end, but a disguised beginning. This new phase may be lonely, but it also marks the end of vicious cycles. You refuse to live in what could have been and immerse yourself in what can be. In doing so, you establish a new rhythm for your life. Each day is a choice. You decide not to be carried away by the past. Instead, you build something new. You focus on your mental health, on your well-being, and observe how slowly confidence returns. And when you look back, you'll see that abandonment was, in fact, the door that needed to be opened to what truly mattered, yourself. Because in the end, the true meaning of transformation does not lie in the broken promises of others, but in the ability to reinvent oneself from pain. You are more than the experiences you have lived. You are the sum of your choices. And ultimately, you have already decided you will not depend on anyone else to be happy. Reality has already been presented. And now, in this new space built from pain, you perceive an echo that you didn't hear before. The voices of the past grow more distant, but they are still there, whispering. You remember the moments when the presence of the other was almost palpable, but what remains is a blurry memory, like a worn photograph. That connection that seemed unbreakable is now just a shadow, and this brings a mixture of relief and burden. The solitude, which once seemed like torture, begins to take on a new form. It transforms into a space for reflection. Instead of being an abyss, it is now a blank canvas. Your story is being rewritten and you are the author. Each day can be a new page where you decide what to write. This freedom, however, comes with a raw awareness. Dealing with the past requires courage. Often ghosts appear without warning. They show up at the most unexpected moments. A familiar scent, a song that makes your heart race. It's at these times that you realize the internal struggle is real. It's easy to get lost in nostalgia, but the reality is that those moments no longer define who you are. Now, you observe this longing with a critical eye. There is no glamour in the illusion of what could have been. There is only the weight of the choices made. You start to understand the importance of honoring these memories, but not letting them control your narrative. The path to self-discovery is not linear. There are setbacks. Sometimes you find yourself thinking, what if I had done things differently? And in that instant, a new thought arises. What if I decide to do things differently now? This new angle brings a lightness. You no longer need to relive every pain, every mistake. They are a part of you, but they are not the whole. In this space of reconfiguration, you discover the power to reinvent your daily rituals. The act of having coffee in the morning, for example, becomes a silent celebration. You savor each sip, conscious of the warmth it brings. This small choice, this simple moment of pleasure, is a reminder that you can take care of yourself in ways that were previously ignored. The routine is born as an oasis. What was once suffocating now reveals itself as a territory of self-discovery. Instead of seeking external validation, you begin to connect with yourself. These are small acts like dancing in the living room, reading a book you've always wanted. Freeing yourself from the need for others' approval transforms into a silent mantra. Each daily decision reinforces your autonomy. And when sadness appears, it is no longer a burden. You welcome it as a temporary visitor. The feeling of loss is poignant, but you understand it also carries lessons. You learn to listen to this emotion, to validate it, but without letting it become your home. The days turn into weeks, and you notice changes in your energy. New friendships bring about genuine connections, people who value you for who you truly are. They are not here to fill voids, but to add color to your palette. Laughing with them, sharing stories, becomes an antidote to loneliness. And in this intertwining of lives, you realize you are not alone on the journey. But that's not all. Observing the interactions, you discern new patterns. Those who are truly committed to you do not make empty promises. They act. The sudden clarity is almost numbing. The system of genuine exchange begins to flourish, and you recognize that you are capable of maintaining healthy relationships. And at the same time, you reflect on all this. Sit in silence with a notebook in hand, mapping your progress. You record not only what you have learned, but also your experiences. Each page transforms into a testimony of resilience. You also note the difficult moments because they deserve to be remembered, not minimized. You give yourself permission to feel everything. The cycle renews. You are no longer seeking external cures, but are committed to nurturing your own growth. When you finally look back, you see that abandonment was not an end, but a turning point. It allowed you to look inside and find hidden treasures. Each challenge is now an opportunity, each tear a renewal, and as you face tomorrow, you feel the anticipation of a full life, not perfect, but authentic. You no longer fear solitude. Instead, you embrace it as part of the process, and so you move forward one step at a time, not because you need to prove something to anyone, but because you finally understand the value of being just you without masks. The reality has already been presented. You decided to observe yourself without judgment, without haste. The layers of who you were slowly dissolve. The mirror reflects not just a face, but a story that is now yours and not someone else's. Dealing with your fears becomes a daily exercise. Instead of fearing them, you learn to coexist. Solitude is no longer a burden, it has become a space of discovery. Sometimes memories come in the form of echoes. Hearing laughter from the past, you feel the weight of nostalgia, but you already know how to deal with it. They are shadows that have no power over your current light. You learn to dance with these echoes, to rewrite them. It is like playing an old melody and realizing that the lyrics have changed. The chords remain, but the meaning evolves. One day, while walking through a park, you saw children playing. The scene brought to the surface a dormant sensation, a genuine smile. At that moment, you realized that joy exists in simplicity. You remembered times when you laughed until your stomach hurt, and realizing this made your heart beat a little stronger. The lightness of childhood still resides within you, waiting to be awakened. You began to seek small pleasures daily. The task is not an effort, but a commitment. The smell of coffee in the morning intensifies. Your eyes open to colors that previously went unnoticed. You observe the sky, the light filtering through the leaves, and notice the beauty in the small things. This sensitivity redefines everything. That same afternoon, you decide to write. Words flow effortlessly, forming paragraphs that speak of pain but also of overcoming it. Each letter is a release. As you sit down to write, you connect with your deepest emotions. Without fear of exposing your weaknesses, you become vulnerable on the page. Revealing yourself in this way turns into an act of bravery. As you narrate your experiences, you realize that vulnerability is a power. It's not about showing weakness, but about allowing yourself to be whole. And in this process, you find new angles of your own story. The open wounds convey lessons that once seemed impossible to understand. Each disappointment now shines, not as a burden, but as a beacon of experience. Time continues its march, and on an ordinary night, you accept an unexpected invitation. A dinner with new friends. The anticipation is palpable, but you don't let yourself be carried away by anxiety. With each interaction, you realize that your worth does not depend on what others think. You share laughs, stories, and looking around, you feel that you finally belong to a place you chose. Amid conversations, a friend talks about overcoming. Her words echo like a calling. You feel that even when unseen, others are fighting battles just like yours. There's a collective strength that blooms in recognition. You feel part of something bigger, where everyone brings their scars, but also their achievements. And as the days unfold, life starts to dance, almost like an ancient choreography that now makes sense. You can accept invitations or refuse them. You can choose what you want to experience, who you want in your space. Relationships become clearer, less nebulous. You observe who aligns with your new frequency. Each encounter brings new perspectives. Each shared laugh, a bond that strengthens. You are no longer bound to the past. What was painful turns into fuel. All those memories are now pages of a book you are writing, and you are the author. So in a moment of silence, you reflect on the transformation. Solitude wasn't just a shadow, but an illuminated path. In a space of introspection, you realize that this journey was necessary to shape who you are becoming. Abandonment, a catalyst. Life no longer presents itself as a labyrinth. The paths become clear, and when you lift your eyes, you visualize the horizon. A future that seems vast, vibrant, full of potential. You allow yourself to dream again, but now with your feet firmly on the ground. The old wounds may leave scars, but they also bring wisdom. You feel immune to criticism, to other people's gazes. Freedom is intoxicating. Control is no longer a threatening concept, but a conscious act of choice. With each decision, you reaffirm your worth. So when sadness arises, like an unwanted visitor, you know how to handle it. It is just a part of the whole, not the whole itself. You have learned to embrace it without identifying with it. And so life becomes a rich internal conversation filled with nuances, where each emotion has its place but none of them takes up the entirety of you. The cycle renews, and you continue. The journey ceases to be linear and becomes a vibrant mosaic of experiences. With each passing day, you come closer to your true essence. No more masks, no imposed duties, just you. And when you finally look yourself in the eyes, you will see you are a masterpiece in constant evolution. You are your strength and your gentleness, and in this new chapter of your life, the only necessary presence is yours. Reality has already been presented.